Discuss today's top stories, including a lawsuit filed against HISD by two parents after teachers and staff allegedly kept using their child's preferred pronouns, despite requests from the parents not to do so. I'm Celeste Díaz Schurman.
And I'm Frank Billingsley. We'll also hear the newest installment of Texperts, our in-depth look at the Texas government with University of Houston professor and party politics co-host Brandon Rottinghaus.
Plus, Laurette Veres, owner of the Bridal Extravaganza Show, will discuss the summer wedding season.
And as Celeste and I discuss the top stories of the day, we want your thoughts, questions, and concerns. Give us a call or text us at 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org.
Hello Houston is made possible in part by founding sponsors John Bradshaw and Kathy Sanders, and by gifts from listeners like you.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Louise Schiavone. The Supreme Court has issued an opinion in the highly anticipated case on birthright citizenship, which was ultimately about the use of universal injunctions. NPR's Juliana Kim reports.
The Supreme Court justices voted 6-3 in favor of the Trump administration's request to limit the use of universal injunctions issued by federal courts. The three liberal justices dissented. Universal injunctions were at the center of the case on birthright citizenship because federal courts had attempted to use it to block President Trump from ending automatic citizenship for all babies born in the U.S. The Trump administration later asked the Supreme Court to block universal injunctions altogether. Friday's opinion asked the lower courts to reconsider their broad rulings. It also said Trump's birthright citizenship order can't take effect for 30 days, giving more time for legal challenges. Juliana Kim, NPR News.
President Trump this morning is calling this opinion a giant win.
I was elected on a historic mandate, but in recent months we've seen a handful of radical left judges effectively try to overrule the rightful powers of the president.
In other opinions, the U.S. Supreme Court decided that Congress acted within its authority when it established a program that provides accessible and subsidized Internet service to rural and underserved areas. Justices Neil Gorsuch, Samuel Alito, and Clarence Thomas dissented. The justices also voted 6-3 to uphold the provision of the Affordable Care Act that provided free preventive care for millions of Americans. In another case, the conservatives on the Supreme Court said parents do have a First Amendment right to opt their children out of public school classes that use books with gay characters. China and the U.S. say they have signed a trade agreement which formalizes a temporary deal they'd already reached in May. There are few details on the agreement, but NPR's Emily Feng breaks down what we do know.
Trade negotiation teams met in Switzerland in May and agreed that both countries would pause most of the retaliatory tariffs they'd imposed on each other for 90 days. Tariffs that reached as high as a base of 145% tax the U.S. imposed on Chinese goods. But then that agreement seemed to fall apart quickly, only to be resuscitated after teams from the two countries met again in London earlier this month. This week, President Trump said he'd signed a trade deal without specifying what was in it. China clarified Friday that they confirmed what they called a consensus reached in May. And China also said they'd begin approving the export of some controlled items, notably some rare earth metals that only China currently refines. Emily Feng, NPR News, Washington.
Stocks are putting in a strong performance, with Wall Street so far on track to finish the week at an all-time high. The Dow is up 477 points. This is NPR News.
Live from News 88.7 in Houston, I'm Gabrielle Dawkins. A man has been arrested in Houston after allegedly impersonating a U.S. Immigration and Customs Enforcement officer. News 88.7's Kyle McClinigan says the man allegedly robbed someone during a fake traffic stop.
37-year-old Giuliano Thompson has been charged with impersonating a public servant and robbery, according to court documents. A Houston Police Department spokesperson said the alleged robbery took place early Monday in the 6400 block of Skyline Drive. The victim told officers that a man claiming to be an ICE officer had initiated a traffic stop and then allegedly stole his money. Thompson was arrested the following day and is currently being held under a $50,000 bond, according to jail records. Thompson's alleged involvement comes as plainclothed ICE officers have arrested individuals in Houston immigration courthouses. Similar arrests have also occurred across Texas and nationwide. I'm Kyle McClinigan, News 88.7.
There is a shortage of physicians in the United States. Why is that? Jonathan Jaffrey is a Chief Health Care Officer for the Association of American Medical Colleges. He explains we have enough people wanting to be doctors, both from the U.S. and internationally, but
the fact of the matter is the real bottleneck is the residency training. We could increase those positions. We could take more students from other countries. The vast majority of U.S. MD graduates do get residency positions, but we do turn away very qualified people from other countries, for example, every year, but there are just not enough positions. So that's the real bottleneck.
Joffrey blames Medicare for capping the number of available residency positions 20 years ago. Since then, the shortage of physicians in the U.S. has been growing. It's currently 85 degrees and partly cloudy. I'm Gabrielle Dawkins, News 88.7.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Fisher Investments. As a fiduciary, Fisher Investments is obligated to act in their client's best interest. Learn more at FisherInvestments.com. Investing in securities involves the risk of loss. This is NPR.
Live from the University of Houston, it's Hello Houston, an open forum on today's biggest stories affecting Houston and beyond. Call now, 713-440-8870, or let us know your thoughts on today's topics by emailing us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now here's your host for Hello Houston, Ernie Manous, Celeste Díaz Schurman, and Frank Billingsley.
Hello, Houston.
Hello, Houston.
It's Friday.
It is.
It is Friday. Ernie's still not with us. He'll be back sometime.
Yes, he will be back sometime. And yes, hello, Houston. If you're watching us on YouTube, thanks for joining us. If you're in your car listening to us, thanks for listening to 88.7.
Yes, and if you're watching us on YouTube, you can. If you're not, you can.
Yes,
I'm watching us right
should.
now. YouTube.com/Houston Public Media, or go to hellohouston.org and click the big orange banner. That'll take you where you want to go. Can you believe we're now closer to Christmas than we were? I mean, we're more than halfway to Christmas.
This year is flying by, and I think that's because there's so much information and news. I mean, the world is changing. I feel like we've been saying that for a really long time. You know, the world is changing, but really it feels like, we did in our country have a major political shift.
Well, the Supreme Court decision this morning about birthright citizenship
a major
that's going to have a lot of ramifications, and I think it's the beginning of what we're going to see as far as other rights that we've taken for granted that have been protected for decades, if not centuries, may change. We'll see.
Well, you know what I do want to talk to you about?
Yes.
The weather, Frank. The weather. I got stuck on Westheimer in Fountain View yesterday.
That was some Texas dew, wasn't it?
It was wild.
It was like a bowling alley out there.
It was. It was.
And
wild.
then it just shows when it comes down around here, it comes down. And it doesn't take much for streets around here. If you get 2 inches of rain in 1 hour, you're going to have street flooding. Now, as Jeff Linder will tell you, and anybody will tell you, those streets are made for catching the water and getting it to the sewers and down to the bayous. So the streets we have are actually made to be canals. So you just have to remember that when you get those kind of big downpours.
Yes.
And be very careful.
So it did. I have to say, as a Houstonian, it caught me off guard. And I feel like I'm pretty good at navigating those type
It's
things.
been a while since we've had street flooding in the Galleria area.
Major street flooding.
Yeah, and then, of course, the lights start
the lights all down Westheimer.
Signs.
The lights went out. It was very funny. I was on Fountain View at the corner of Fountain View and Westheimer. And so the Houston Housing Authority is right there. And there was a group of people standing outside kind of in that Porte-Cochere area watching cars drive down. And they would start cheering when the car would start backing up. And it was kind of a party out there, which I was like, gosh, Houston, this weather is nuts. And then I was like, gosh, Houston, we are nuts and I love us.
Have you ever flooded a car?
I have never flooded a car.
I did. When I worked for Channel 13, I was on my way in because it was big storms. It was 1991 or 2 or 3, I don't know, early 90s. So I'm on my way in to get to the station, And I'm trying to get there through this flooded Bissonnette, right?
Yeah.
Sort of flooded. But everybody was doing it. Everybody was trying to get through.
Everybody was doing it. Famous last words, Frank.
And then on the other side, this big city bus comes and just washed a wave over my car.
I saw a couple of those.
And that was that. So you may think that you have enough, and you could get through it, but then a big truck or a bus or somebody else, even an SUV, comes along and washes a wave of water over your car. That's when you're in trouble.
I don't play around with that. I absolutely
don't either anymore.
Well, you learned your lesson, a hard lesson, I'm sure.
I've learned everything in life.
You know who learned a lesson yesterday? We all learned a lesson in patience. Patience.
Oh, talk about road rage.
Yesterday, Houston, we're going viral, and it's not because of our flooding, but because a 64-year-old woman yesterday, she had a history. She has a history of mental health. She initially veered off into an 18-wheeler on Interstate 45 near Spring yesterday afternoon, peak traffic rush hour, and she wrecked herself, her own vehicle, and then she pulled out a folding chair and sat in the middle of traffic, wait for it, with a gun.
Yeah.
Oh, and it gets there's more, for 5 hours.
Yeah.
In the
a
middle.
lawn chair.
In a lawn chair.
It's pretty clear she has mental health issues.
Yeah.
It's fortunate. They call it the SWAT team because somebody starts brandishing a gun.
It's very serious.
They brought in family to de-escalate the situation.
Yeah, they had all kinds of law enforcement officers. Yep. They had crisis negotiators. And then they finally convinced her to surrender around 6 p.m. and the freeway was shut down both ways while this was happening during rush hour. It was a major traffic jam. And there's a picture going viral of the negotiator giving the woman a hug as she gave up her gun. She was taken to a hospital for observation and treatment. But, again, that is one of the most Houston things ever. And again, we are on display on showing compassion and love. I don't know how compassionate I would have been if I was sitting in my car.
I know that, but you were anyway with floods.
That's true. I was sitting in my car.
So it's always something.
Yes, absolutely.
Lawn chair ladies and floods.
Lawn
chair. Be careful.
Lawn chair ladies and floods. So welcome to Houston.
Kevin sent me this story that he heard.
Okay.
That there's a couple in California getting married, big wedding, right? So everybody's asking them, when are you getting married? When are you getting married? And they sent out invitations rather than invitations to say, you are not invited to our wedding.
Wow.
So that people would stop asking.
Can you do that in other parts of your life? You're uninvited to talk to me about this. But coming up in the hour, we are going to be having the owner of the Bridal Extravaganza.
I know.
And
I want to find out if this is a new trend or not.
We are going to be chatting. Also, coming up this hour, we'll have another great episode of Texperts, which is our in-depth look in the Texas government with Brandon Rottinghaus.
Well, let's get started. This is an interesting lawsuit to discuss.
This is very interesting, and I'm sure if you're listening right now to Hello Houston, you can join this conversation at 713-440-8870. 2 Houston ISD parents have filed a lawsuit against the district after teachers and staff allegedly continued to use their child's preferred pronouns despite requests from the parents not to do so. So the child's preferred pronouns were he and him. Their parents are saying her given pronouns are her and she.
And let's make it clear, this is a teenager.
This is a teenager.
Bel Air High School. This is not a 8-year-old or something like that. So presumably someone who is certainly capable of driving a car, and you're capable of making your own decisions in life.
Right. So the lawsuit filed in federal court on Monday pertains to a student at Bel Air High School who had asked teachers to be referred to with masculine he, him pronouns and a different name. The parents claimed that upon discovering their child was using a different name and pronouns, they repeatedly spoke with various teachers and administrators. I believe they even had a sit down with the principal to express their objection. The lawsuit was filed with assistance from the Alliance Defending Freedom, a nonprofit committed to protecting religious freedoms, free speech, the sanctity of life, marriage and family, and parental rights, according to its website. The school district declined to comment to HPM on the lawsuit. We did reach out to them. While HISD does not have any policies related directly to gender identity and preferred pronoun use, several Houston area school districts do, such as Fort Bend ISD, Cy-Fair ISD, and Katy ISD, have passed policies regulating the usage of pronouns and requiring that parents be informed if their child identifies as transgender or asks to use pronouns that differ from their gender at birth. What are your thoughts? Do you side with the school, or do you think the parents are in the right? Give us a call. Now is the time, or you can send us a text at 713-440-8870.
You know, first of all, this Alliance Defending Freedom, this nonprofit, they throw in, we're protecting religious freedom and free speech and the sanctity of life and marriage and family. It's sort of like a lot there.
Yeah, there's a lot
I mean,
there.
what happened to simply freedom of expression? Because you're not protecting that, are you? Of this teenager.
So I don't know if, okay, so for me, I feel like I would be furious as a parent. And this is less to do with pronouns, but this is more to do, I think, about the right as a parent to navigate very private, intimate family matters that are between a parent and their child versus parents and teachers. We don't see the conversations that these parents might be having with their child. And I guarantee you, these parents love their child and want everything for their child.
Sure.
And so as a parent, if I am sitting there and I'm having very hard conversations for my child, because that is a very hard conversation for any child to tell their parents, I am having gender identity questions. Okay. Then for you to meet with the school and tell the school, listen, these are the rules I am implementing in my household, and this is her birth certificate. She's not 18. She is my child. She does live in my house. I do buy her clothes. I do pay.
By God, she's going to be a girl.
Well, not that she's going to be a girl. Not that she's going to be a girl, but I have certain rules, and I have certain
what are your rules? So you have to be
rules.
a girl if you were born a girl?
It's not about the gender. It is the right as a parent to navigate what you believe is best in that time. Now, if my child's in college and comes home and isn't living in my home and she says, Mom, I've decided I want to be, instead of Evelyn, I'm going to be Eli, I would say, okay, we're gonna
I have
talk
a friend
about
who is
this.
Eli, actually.
We're gonna talk about this, and I have some people that I absolutely love and respect that are transgender, and I would love to hear from the transgender community on this. But as a parent, I gotta say, on this one, I've got to side with the
Well, you realize
parent.
Lamar High School has a daycare. So if someone is old enough to have sex and have a child, and some of these kids are married, that's why there are other bills trying to prevent marriage at age 16 or 17. You don't think they're old enough to make their own decisions without going to mommy and daddy and talking about their gender?
You know what? If my child is 16, 17 and wants to make decisions without mommy and daddy, then I'm going to say, okay, well then you know what? You can go shopping with your own money without mommy and daddy's money.
So you're going to use the money leverage?
No, I think that this issue has been politicized. I think this issue has become very polarizing when sometimes you just have to have common sense. And in this, what I'm saying is that I think most people are not extreme. I think most people want people to be able to express themselves. Sure. However, when it's your child and you're navigating things within your home, I think it is fair for if a parent goes to the school, if my child is smoking marijuana, I want to know. If my child is having sex at school, I want to know. If my child is saying that they want to be called a different pronoun than their actual name, I want to know.
Well, you're breaking the law in with their own choices. And
yes.
Sometimes your child's choices are none of your business, even when you're a parent. Now, I think there's an age. I think that's probably 14, I would say, because 14, I think you can get a license to do a lot of things in life.
15. You get a permit at 15. You still have to drive as an adult, and then 16.
But my high school was 10th, 11th, 12th. A lot of them are 9, 10, 11, 12.
10, 11, 12.
I think if you're in high school, you're old enough to make your own decisions about whether you want to be called a he or a she. And you don't have to go to your parents.
I think you're still very
young.
Your brain does not fully develop until you're about 21, 22. But we have a lot to discuss here, and we want to hear from you. You can give us a call, 713-440-8870. Alvin from 3rd Ward is on the line. Alvin, help us out here, Alvin.
How you guys doing? Well, you keep the hot topic going, don't you?
We do. That's our job, Alvin. Got to keep you on your toes.
Well, look, this is my opinion. I've got a third option, and I think that we need to exercise this much more in society, which is this. If you have I actually agree with both of you guys. which is why there should be a third option. If the nearly adult child and the adult parent are in conflict with each other, then what they should do is not burden the actual system itself, which actually is responsible for teaching all of the other potential 30 kids in that class and potentially in that school system. Teachers have a hard enough job already than to actually be in conflict with a young adult about what they would like to be called and be in crosshairs legally with the parent. In instances like that, the responsible thing is for the parent and that student to find another institution, another option.
Well, let me read you a text that we got, Alvin. This is from Carrie Carlson, who says the child/adolescent is the one who loses in this scenario. Some parents are not supportive of transgender identities, and school is the only safe place. I side with the school. So what if you're in that situation?
I think that a lot of times, and Carrie, I hear you, and this is my issue, is that I think a lot of times people immediately go to the parents. Yes, teachers have it hard. So do parents. We are navigating more than any other decade, era, some of the hardest, most outside influences my child can have on the internet. And she gets on the internet at school. And it has never been harder to be a parent. And the problem is that if you simply say, this isn't about pronouns, this is about right now, I am making decisions about my child and them growing up and trying to, immediately it's, maybe this child can't talk to her parents. Maybe her parents are absolutely heartbroken, and you know what? That's okay too. And maybe they are navigating it themselves, and they themselves are trying to figure out what is the next right step. And whenever you're in the moment and you have somebody that you absolutely love, your child is somebody that
But why is it on the school?
Absolutely love.
Why is it on the school to inform the parents that the child is using a different pronoun? Why is it on the school? I mean, it's your child. Why don't you know this?
Because you know what?
Why don't you know this?
My child
Are you monitoring your child's social media like you say you do?
A lot of people do. And the thing is that just the way girls used to go to school in jeans and then put on a skirt because they wanted to wear a little mini skirt,
okay.
Or I used to put lip gloss on.
Right.
That is very different than your child coming out and saying, I want to change my gender. There's a big difference.
There's a reason they don't want to say that to their parents.
I think they have told their
whatever
parents.
those reasons are, that's irrelevant. I don't think the parents should be in a position to sue the school
And
because the school didn't tell them something about their own child that they should already know.
This is the thing, is people nowadays say parents need to be disciplining their children. Parents need to be monitoring the internet.
Okay,
parents need to be monitoring their cell phones. But then whenever we get involved and we say, okay, you live in my home and these are my rules, and by golly, it's not extreme.
It's not the rule.
It's not extreme.
What are the rules? I mean,
all of a sudden it's like, well, wait. You shouldn't be telling your child to do that. Which one is it?
Do you think the child broke rules by going by he, she, or whatever pronoun?
I don't think necessarily.
Is that a rule in your house right now? Do you have a rule in your house that your children have to go by their assigned gender?
That's not an issue in my house.
Well, okay, that's not the issue. Your issue is that school should have said something. But let me ask you this. Another example. Bobby is making out with Mike in the hallway. Should the teacher or the principal who sees that call home and say, just so you know, your son is gay?
I can tell you
Do you think
much.
do you think that's the school's responsibility?
I can tell you this much. If Bobby was making out with Cindy, they would call the parents.
They would?
So if Bobby is making
they?
out with yes.
Oh, they
absolutely.
would?
Yes.
That's the school's responsibility to say your son's making out with a girl?
Absolutely.
When did that become a thing?
But that's the problem,
Boy,
Frank.
I grew up in the 70s.
Okay, we want to hear from you. 713-440-8870.
70. We're at 88.7. That's why we got that number.
70. Sorry. Clearly, this is a hot topic. We have a call from Aubriana from Southwest Houston on topic C.
Hi.
Hi,
I just
Aubriana.
wanted to comment. Hey, I just wanted to say that it's inherently unsafe to tell any child's parents something that, like you've discussed, personal and something that incidental. It's dangerous to notify the parents if they don't already know.
That's a point. You might be putting that child in danger with their father, because some fathers can be abusive.
Listen, I think that is an absolute 100% a theory. But what if also the parents love their child and they just are trying to navigate a hard situation? And they are telling the school, listen,
that's fine.
This is a hard. I think that we just have become so polarized that automatically, if a parent is saying that, it's like, oh, they're abusing their child, or their child should be able to go to them. But navigating teenagers is hard. That's all I'm saying.
Okay, what does Andrea have to say? She's calling from the East End. Hi, Andrea.
Hi, guys. I'm actually dealing with something like that right now because my 14-year-old brother is non-binary, and my parents are extremely homophobic, and I'm trying to navigate the legal system because he's been self-harming for the last year. And so I go to bed every night wondering if I'm going to be able to get custody of him because he does not have gender-affirming parents. It's not even necessarily that he's going to make a change in his gender. I'm not even sure how to go about this because the laws have changed. And so I just think it's extremely irresponsible to expect a teacher to out their students to their homophobic parents.
Andrea, that's an excellent point. And I want to say personally, thank you for being such a great sister to your brother. And I hope to God that you do get custody of him, her, whatever identity this person is going through. And there are a lot of people on your side, so don't give up and do everything you can. But I think she's right. I think it can be extremely, this is a real life situation, not just the theory of parents should have rights and schools should have rights and everybody should be telling everybody what's going on, because you could put that child's life in danger by doing so.
Absolutely. And I guarantee you that these parents, I don't know all of the hypotheticals. Adriana, thank you so much for calling in and sharing your personal experience. You can join the conversation at 713-440-8870. Kyle from Clear Lake is on the line. Kyle, welcome to Hello Houston. What are your thoughts on this?
Hi, all. Thanks for taking my call. I just wanted to say, Celeste, I take your point, and I think you're probably right. But one thing that I'm worried about is that maybe people listening kind of are taking what you're saying the wrong way. In your opinion, if parents sit down with their child and decide that it's right for them to go by whatever pronoun they want to go by, whatever name they want to go by, do you believe that it's therefore the parents' right to tell the school, and the school should then abide by the parents' wishes in that case too?
I do think so. I do. 100%. If a child comes to their parent and says, I would like to change my gender, and the parents are working through them and they have gone through the process of processing it as a family, and the parents are on board 1,000%. And so that's why when Katy ISD passed this latest policy about that, and Cy-Fair and Fort Bend, I felt for those families that did have children that were transgender, that did support them. I 1,000% think it is within the parent's right and the child's right, if they're all on the same page, that the school should follow the parents' rules, even if it is, I want you to go by my child's preferred pronouns. Yes, thank you.
Do you think a parent should sue a school that refuses to let your female daughter go by a male pronoun and name?
I think so.
If it's okay with you.
If it is okay with me, I think the parent has the right. And because
they should be able to do it at school.
Adriana was saying that this child is self-harming. And some parents have to process things. These things are not easy things. These are complex, hard things. But as a parent, you love your child. And if you see your child suffering and you come to a good place, and as a Christian, I would love my child regardless. I 100% think that if a parent says, hey, teachers, my child wants to go by Eli now, we're going by Eli, and we are going to support them, and they don't, I would have an issue.
All right, Jay. Thank you for that.
Thanks, Jay.
I think we have David on the line from League City. David, are you there?
Yes.
What's up?
I'm here.
What are your thoughts?
This is a really hot and very fun topic. I would say that I have to agree with the lady host. I would be very concerned if my child can change the home address, for example, or his name, and then I don't get notified that actually changed.
And you would sue? Would you sue the school because of that?
I could. I think I should be notified for any changes that my child is making to any of his information.
I wonder how these parents
let
did
alone
find
his
out.
gender.
Yes.
Well, let alone his gender. Now that, since that has been bringing up, that just makes parents hesitate to send their children to that school and just look into different options in the kids' education. I think it will really affect the amount of child that go to school.
Yeah.
Well,
thank you, Jay.
I disagree. I think if the child is breaking the law, then that's one thing. They're doing donuts in the parking lot in their brand new convertible, then you need to tell the parents. If they're smoking pot, if they're doing something illegal, you need to tell the parents. They need to have a parent-teacher principal conference. That's what we did growing up. But if
they still do that.
But if a girl comes in with jeans and changes into her skirt or whatever, and I don't think you need to tell anybody that. And I think if you want to go by he instead of she, that's your business.
There you go. Coming up on Hello Houston, we'll have another great episode of Texperts, our in-depth look in the Texas government with Brandon Rottinghaus. This is News 8870.
A strong Houston public media is an essential source for an informed, engaged, and connected community. We appreciate our Affinity Council leadership for fostering an environment that prioritizes respect, well-being, and growth for our audience. The estate of Martin Grady, Ann Harder Charitable Foundation, Barbara and Winston Kyle, Susan and Michael Clavness, and Beth Robertson. Thank you.
I'm Josh Adams, the new General Manager of Houston Public Media, and we are here for one reason, you. I'm thrilled to lead this remarkable team dedicated to our mission of informing, educating, and inspiring everyone in the greater Houston area. And yes, these are challenging times, but together we'll meet them head on with bold ideas, honest reporting, and stories that matter. Houston Public Media is your public media. Together, let's make it incredible.
On the next Fresh Air, we remember war correspondent Rod Nordland. He was diagnosed with a lethal brain tumor in 2019 and died on Sunday at the age of 75. He talked about facing mortality as a war correspondent and as a patient. And we'll hear from legendary guitarist Buddy Guy, who has a cameo in Ryan Coogler's film Sinners. Join us.
I don't know why in the hell I'm here.
You can hear that tonight at 8 p.m.
Hello, I'm Nikki Beatty. Join me for this week's Arts Hour from the BBC. With filmmaker Danny Boyle and writer Alex Garland on 28 Years Later, we hear from Argentinian writer Agustina Bastarrica, Korean-Canadian director Celine Som, Ghanaian singer Florence Aduni, and sitarist Anushka Shankar. That's all in the Arts Hour from the BBC.
You can hear it tonight. It's on at 9 p.m.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on any of today's topics, call or text 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now here's Celeste Díaz Schurman and Frank Billingsley.
All right, on Sunday, Texas Governor Greg Abbott vetoed a state ban on THC products, and that brought the question: what are the governor's powers and veto powers? So we said, let's call up Brandon Rottinghaus and ask him. Brandon, welcome back to Hello Houston.
Hey Frank, how are you?
I'm good. So I know you're going to introduce this bit of Texperts. So tell us what we need to know about this whole veto thing.
Vetoes are interesting in Texas. We typically think of a Texas governor as being kind of limited in terms of their power, but they've got a lot of power when it comes to vetoes. At the end of a session, they're the only hunter in the deer blind, so they've got a lot of power to be able to either kill legislation and effectively put a pin in it, or they can really, if they want to, have this as an opening discussion for how that legislation might be shaped in the future.
Well, I always heard that the lieutenant governor had the most power in Texas, but I think it was even you that was saying, no, that may not be true anymore.
Yeah, it's a great point. That's been traditionally the case, and obviously the fact that we have this plural executive where these two state leaders have to share power makes for some interesting dynamics. But at this point in the cycle, at this point in a session, it's the governor who's got the most power. We tend to think of the veto as being the end of the legislative process, but in many cases, especially for a strong governor, it's really just the beginning. Vetoes are really about political leverage for governors. And so when it comes to these debates with the House or with the Senate and between all the different leaders, the governor really is in a good place right now because politically speaking, he is the most powerful.
All right. Brandon Rottinghaus is a University of Houston political science professor and co-host of Houston Public Media's Party Politics. So, Brandon, thanks for joining us. And now, without further ado, sit back, relax, and enjoy. Here's Texperts.
Welcome to Texperts, Houston Public Media's short primers on Texas government. I'm Brandon Rottinghaus, a political science professor at the University of Houston.
Hi, I'm Governor Greg Abbott, and I want to welcome you to the Texas Governor's Office. This is where I do things like meet with legislators. It's also where I host national and international leaders, and also where I either sign or veto laws.
With that, Governor Greg Abbott wields an oversized novelty stamp above his head that reads, veto. The stamp is fake. It's a gag gift given to then Governor Bill Clements and found by Governor Rick Perry decades later. But the power of the governor's veto is very real. It's often called the governor's gift, and for good reason. The governor of Texas is a weak governor on paper. So weary were the people crafting the Texas government of gubernatorial power that when they created the Constitution in 1876, there were no serious debates about the role of the chief executive. The effect was a discombobulated, decentralized position with short terms of office and low pay. But the office is more than the sum of its parts. Texas governors have expanded their power through aggressive use of the powers they do have, like the veto. But with less constitutional power in the bank, they have to earn the powers that they use. All constitutions in Texas have given the governor and the president, when it was a republic, the power of the veto. It's often called the governor's gift because it was such a valuable bargaining tool. The veto is the governor's strongest constitutional power in his or her struggle with the state legislature to direct policy. The Texas Constitution allows the governor to veto legislation, sign it, or let it go into law without his or her signature. The bill does not need the governor's signature to become law, but they'll often hold a signing ceremony as a way to publicly endorse the new law. The governor has 10 days, excluding Sundays, to sign or veto a bill, or the bill automatically becomes law. If the legislature adjourns after submitting a bill to the governor, but before the normal 10-day period would have expired, the governor has 20 days from the receipt of it to veto the legislation, or the bill becomes law. Governors typically let only a few bills become law without their signature. If the legislature feels strongly enough about the legislation to reconsider it, 2/3 of the members of both houses of the legislature can override the veto. But this rarely happens, partly due to the fact that the legislature is often out of session by the time the governor might get around to vetoing a bill. From 1876 to 1968, only 25 vetoes were overridden out of almost 1,000 vetoes. Only one veto has been overridden since the 1960s. In 1979, Governor Bill Clements vetoed legislation that limited the ability of county government to prohibit hunters from killing female deer. Because the legislature is often out of session when the veto window closes, all Texas governors have to do is wait. They're the only hunter in the deer blind. Unlike the President of the United States, Texas governors also have a particularly effective defensive tool, the line item veto. A line item veto allows the governor to reject a specific provision in a bill without rejecting the whole bill. So, like a surgeon with a scalpel, the governor can carve up a budget removing parts they don't like. Governor Abbott has some important bills on his desk, including a $338 billion budget, a bill requiring foods like Doritos and Mountain Dew to have a warning label, and a controversial ban on all THC products, and potentially hurting and maybe even killing a booming $8 billion industry. The stakes are high, so we turn to a former member of the legislature to help us understand how governor vetoes work. Sarah Davis, welcome to Texperts.
Well, thank you for having me, Professor.
You were in office for about a decade, and you were known as a fierce campaigner and a very formidable questioner of witnesses. I went back and looked at some of the highlights, and there are many, and it was a pleasure to see. And that gives the legislature a lot of power, especially individual legislatures. But at the end of a session, it's the governor who often holds most of the cards. So, from the perspective of a legislator, how do gubernatorial vetoes work?
Well, sometimes it can be kind of a mystery. The governor has 20 days following adjournment of sine die to veto legislation. He or she can also veto legislation during a session, as legislation makes it to his or her desk. So a lot of us keep our fingers crossed. Now, I will say I have served under Governor Rick Perry
Mhm.
and Governor Greg Abbott. They had very different, I would say, veto styles.
Interesting. Okay. Tell us about that.
Well, I think we used to joke and say that Governor Perry was house trained because he started in the Texas House of Representatives, but he really understood the legislative polls and the relationships and the time crunch that we face because we're only there for 140 days and we can't vote the first 60. So he really understood the pressures that individual members were under in order to pass their legislation. So this is just my personal experience, but whenever Governor Perry had an issue with something that I was working on, someone from his staff would notify me, would come talk to me and say, hey, the governor's not going to be able to sign this. And I would say, is there any changes that we could make to it that would make the governor comfortable? And if it was yes, then you would make those changes. And sometimes it was just no. But it was really important that he would do that during the session so you don't spin your wheels and your political capital
Yeah.
passing legislation that is eventually going to get vetoed. So
Yeah.
I always thought that Governor Perry really handled the legislature so well and really understood what we were under because he'd been there for a long time.
Yeah.
Whereas with Greg Abbott, I felt like his vetoes, at least towards me, were largely punishment, for not being compliant or challenging him in any way. So yeah, I had a bill. He didn't give any notice. There was no expression that the governor was nervous about a bill, and I had him veto a bill. And then the next session, we got a Democrat to carry the exact same bill, and it passed, and he didn't veto it. So that sort of felt like that was kind of a punishment veto.
Interesting.
But I was never given any kind of heads up about that Governor Abbott would have an issue with anything. So
Interesting.
I really think it's there's also different styles.
Yeah. Yeah, it's interesting you note that because at the federal level, oftentimes vetoes are very partisan. Often the president will veto a bill of carried by members of the opposite party. But in Texas, it's pretty bipartisan. Bills of both parties get popped. Is this something that's sort of unique to Texas? And what are the kind of dynamics there where the kind of legislative negotiation continues after the bill gets passed?
Yeah, I mean, I think Texas is really unique. I mean, we get along, Republicans and Democrats, when I served, really had a very good working relationship.
Mhm.
And probably 95% of what we would ultimately pass would pass, almost unanimously with
Yeah.
Republican and Democrat support. And I know I always made an effort to try and get Democrats to be, Democrats and Republicans to be joint authors because I always wanted anything that I was passing to be bipartisan or, look bipartisan when you're just looking at who's, joining your legislation. So I think we are, really unique about that. I don't see that the governors, when I was in office, were really, punishing based on political party. I think with Governor Perry, he was very forthright and he vetoed because he just didn't agree with the legislation. Like I said, I had a different experience with Governor Abbott, but I haven't seen Governor Abbott just wanting to punish Democrats or being Democrats. In fact, I think the first veto that the governor issued, in the last legislative session was issued during session, and it was a Republican member's bill. So
Interesting. Yeah, I wanted to ask about that too, because there's a weird quirk in Texas where, because the legislature like sine dies and leaves town, the governor has a kind of carte blanche to be able to act without the legislature being potentially able to overrule it, which they'd have to do if they were in session. Is this something that should be changed? There's been legislation that's been proposed that's never passed that would alter this, but this is something that would obviously give the legislature more power, and the governor kind of comparatively would have to play a bit more defense.
well, as someone who's a former member of the House, I'm all for empowering the legislative branch of government and, decentralizing the power of the governor's office, which has honestly just been growing and growing, which was really not how our founders envisioned the government of Texas. We did not envision to have a powerful governor. The power was really supposed to lie in the legislature. And I think our power has actually been eroding for several sessions. And so, no, I think that would be, I think there's an argument to be made that the legislature in and of itself should be able to call itself into session, if we have, emergencies or budget emergencies. I mean, a lot of the catastrophes that we face, like in Houston, like with Harvey, we were not in session. And, a lot of people don't really understand what we can and can't do. But when we're not in session, my role as a state representative is really just to kind of connect you with resources, state resources, and, help you navigate what you could possibly need from the state. But not having that ability, to say, hey, we need to look at this budget. We're going to need to spend some more money over here. Or I think there could be some value. Now, that being said, we also have a tradition of very limited government. So it would be a hard sell, I think, to want to expand bringing the legislature back in session any more than we have to.
Interesting. Is there a way to, as a legislator, to game the veto process? There is a moment where you once famously asked the governor to veto one of your own bills.
I did.
Also, is there a way to make sure the governor doesn't veto your bill, to communicate ahead of time that this is something that's important, or there's bipartisan support, or it's an emergency, or what have you?
Well, I think it's definitely if you have the ability to communicate with the governor and the governor wants to communicate with you, that's great. When I was first elected and Governor Perry was our governor, he made it a point to meet with all incoming Republican freshmen one-on-one. And even though it was like a 5 to 10 minute meeting, he literally said, what are your priorities? And I remember talking to him about a bill that I was working on to stop the destruction of historic court records. And he loved that bill. And he said, if you get that bill to my desk, I'll sign it and I'll give you a bill signing ceremony. And of course, then he decided to run for president. So I was the only one that got a bill signing ceremony in 2011, my first session. So that's great. But like I said, sometimes the governor is not as chatty. But I think if you have the opportunity, to talk, even if you're not able to talk to the governor, but talk to his policy advisors, I don't think that can ever hurt you. So no, I think communication is best. You see the communication totally break down the last couple of weeks of session between the House and the Senate. Everyone is, they're playing chicken basically about you're not passing enough House bills, and the Senate says you're not passing enough Senate bills. So kind of gets to a standstill for a while, and then the dam breaks and all the bills start flying through. So
totally. Well, Sarah Davis, thank you so much for being on Texperts.
My pleasure. Thanks for having me.
Thanks for listening to Texperts, and thanks to everybody, cast and crew here at Houston Public Media, for making it happen.
That was Brandon Rottinghaus, University of Houston political science professor and co-host of Party Politics on Channel 8. He spoke with former state representative Sarah Davis. But coming up on Hello Houston, we'll get an inside scoop on Houston's biggest bridal event, the Bridal Extravaganza Show, and we'll be taking your calls and questions at 713-440-8870. We're going to learn all about bridal trends and wedding trends this summer.
I love it.
Stay with us.
Houston Public Media, in partnership with Texas Southern University, brings to you The Vibe. R&B, hip-hop, and neo-soul. Music that resonates with all ages. The Vibe on 88.7 HD3 and on the Houston Public Media app.
Houston Public Media brings to you PBS World. Experience the personal connection behind the headlines with programming devoted to telling stories that humanize complex issues. PBS World on TV 8.6 and online at houstonpublicmedia.org.
And now back to Hello Houston. To get your comment in on any of today's topics, call or text 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. And now here's Celeste Díaz Schurman and Frank Billingsley.
Calling all brides to be, grooms, and wedding dreamers. Houston's biggest bridal event is back, the Bridal Extravaganza Show. It's an expo and it has the ultimate wedding planning party. From cake tastings and cocktails to live fashion shows and vendor meet and greets. This is where dream weddings begin and take shape. So if you're planning your wedding, you might want to check this out. But also, just in general, this summer there's been some major weddings with Jeff Bezos and Lauren Sanchez in Venice right now, one of the biggest events, wedding events that we've had in memory. And here to tell us more is Laurette Veres, the owner and producer of the Bridal Extravaganza Show, to give us inside scoop about trends and what engaged couples should be looking at. Laurette, welcome to Hello Houston.
Thanks for having us. Always a pleasure.
So what right now are the trends when we're looking at summer weddings?
So you're seeing girls do multiple dress changes and short dresses. How cute is that? We saw them come out about 6 months ago, and now, of course, 6 months later, they're actually wearing them to their weddings. So that was super fun and exciting.
Like for the walk down the aisle?
Absolutely, absolutely.
Wow. Cool.
So not just a reception dress. Because when I was getting married, this is over a decade ago, it was you had your wedding, you walk down the aisle dress, and then you changed into your reception dress, and then you had your leaving dress.
Yeah. They're still doing that, and it's amazing. And I am seeing sequins. I am seeing feathers. Girls are really pushing things over the edge, but still being very true to themselves and very unique.
I have an economic question.
Yes.
Because weddings are expensive. And especially when COVID canceled a year's worth of weddings, that pushed all these weddings into the next couple of years, and they were astronomically expensive just to get the venue, much less the dress and the cake and all, the band and all that. Have they settled down yet?
I like to say, please have, pity on the wedding industry. We were hit so hard,
Oh, I
right?
know.
And then when things came back, they were slammed. So you had somebody who didn't have work for 7 or 8 months, had crazy brides trying to reschedule, and then everybody needs to get married. We did see costs. They went up, there is inflation too. So I would say the average wedding is still around $32,000 in Houston. What I'm seeing is
$32,000.
And that's average.
How many guests for that? 200?
So that's what I was going to say.
Oh.
No. That's how they're keeping it at that price, is they're cutting the guest list. The normal guest list today is about 70
people.
70.
Yeah.
So we were talking earlier about this couple in California. Everybody was asking about coming to their wedding. Yeah. So they sent out invitations just to say, you are not invited to the wedding, so quit asking.
Oh, gosh, that's hilarious.
That has not made it to the South yet.
That is not a tip. No.
That's not Southern.
I feel like that would never happen here. No.
But it could.
Okay, Laurette, now you just have to tell us what's one of your wildest stories that you've heard of a bride.
Okay, so, believe it or not, there wasn't the bride, but it was the mother of the groom. She had a dress, and the dress had a cape. And when she opened the cape, there was actually a picture of her son. I am not kidding. I am not kidding. This was sent to me. I wasn't there. But I'm like, wow. And I just thought, that bride, that mom, that son, I can't
Listen, I have a 4-year-old son. I get it. I wouldn't do it, but I get it.
Yeah,
I get it.
On a blanket, maybe, right?
Yeah.
But on the dress at the wedding. And then she presented it. It was like a surprise.
Oh.
What about the wearing white if you're a guest? Is that still a big no-no?
Ooh, yes. What are the traditions?
If you ask me personally, I still think it is. If I'm going to a wedding, I'm always like, of course I would never wear white. And I don't see people really wearing it. I have seen a cute trend, though, where the girl said, I want everybody to be in a shade of blue, because that kind of went with her theme, and she thought that would look good for her
congregation.
Or the whole we all got the message, wear a shade of blue.
Well, a couple of years ago, Kim Kardashian set a trend of, which I never thought I would say this on NPR, but Kim Kardashian set a trend of where her bridesmaids wore white.
Okay.
And that became a thing.
Sure. Well, anything Kim does is going to be a trend. I think that's okay. Here's the thing. If the bride wants it, absolutely. If the bride tells you should wear white to my wedding, you absolutely should. Right?
Well, to that end, are brides making bridal what are they called?
Maid of honors,
Maid of honors,
and bridesmaids.
Bridesmaids, dresses more like reasonable to actually be able to wear again.
So here's what's funny. Okay, you're dating yourself because like if I'll have like the younger girls
if I would take me to dinner.
The younger girls in my office, I say, is that still a thing that the bride will say, hey, you get to wear this again? And they look at me like I'm crazy. And I'm like, yeah, because bridesmaids' dresses used to be ugly. And then the bride used to say, but you'll get to wear it again. And they're all like, what? No, they're like so nice now.
Okay.
And the biggest trend is that they're all like in different colors and they choose their own. So they choose it for their body style. I don't hear bridesmaids complaining like they did at my age. Like at my age, all the brides were like, I don't want to be another bridesmaid. Oh my God, this horrible dress that I'm never going to wear again.
Yeah.
No, they're wearing them again. So there you go. So that's good.
That is good. So the Bridal Extravaganza Show, I see it's back. Where did it go?
So no, we always say it's back. We're twice a year. We're always at the downtown George R. Convention, George R. Brown. We only missed one during COVID. Yeah. And so, we just say it's back. Like, it's exciting. It's back. But yes.
Like the circus.
Yeah.
It's back in town.
We're back in town.
What can people expect when they go to this event?
So it's, first of all, so much fun.
Oh, it is.
People bring their moms and their bridesmaids, and they get dressed up. They wear veils.
And they make their groom to be, they make them come.
So isn't that cute? I'll say people like, you don't see every groom, but I feel like when you see a groom, he's either been, told he has to be there or he is actually interested, which I think is awesome. Yeah. And usually he'll want to talk to the DJ or maybe the videographer or taste the catering. I've met a lot of girls who say, I gave him a project. His project was music and, kind of get them involved.
Sure.
What if you're planning maybe your second? Or third or fourth or fifth wedding.
And that's music to my ears. The Bridal Extravaganza always says, absolutely, come on back, do it bigger and better. And usually they do it bigger and better the next time.
Because they're older and they're richer.
That is the point.
And they know what they
want. How about
want.
the gay weddings? Do you cater to gay weddings?
So we don't. Okay. Thank you for saying that. Because when that all passed, a lot of people contacted me and said, you need to do your own expo for that market. And I said, that is absolutely not what we need. The whole point is inclusion. The whole point is that our show is for everybody. And so we don't cater necessarily, but we don't not cater at all. Absolutely. Yeah. We have all couples.
So nice. my Bridal Extravaganza story is I didn't grow up here. I grew up in South Texas, but my husband grew up in Katy. And my mother-in-law, when we got engaged, was so excited, and we went to the Bridal Extravaganza.
Love to hear
and
that.
I have pictures watching the fashion show. And then I
won.
Dan did not go.
What did you win? What did you win?
I won a engagement announcement in a Bridal Extravaganza magazine or a wedding magazine.
Yes.
And
cool.
so our engagement was in a magazine. Our engagement,
do you help with that, with the paper part of a wedding?
Yeah, like is it invitations?
So we do have one invitation company. That's an interesting thing. When I've been at the show 19 years now. The show's been running for 41 years. There used to be 10. Now there's one. And what does that say about just the world? But she's awesome. Her stuff is very custom. And to me, you should not order your invitations online without talking to someone. I've heard so many horror stories. You think it's going to be one way online. It comes. It's not. You should see it. You should touch it. You should feel it. But yeah, I hate to call it a dying art. I'll just call it more of a customized, not everybody, a lot of people think they can do without.
We had ours done with calligraphy, and the woman
she
wrote upside down.
So cute. I love that.
That was amazing that she could do that she did it.
And did they get delivered? Because I would always worry about the postal service with that one. It's pretty, but can it be read?
That is one thing that I think is underappreciated is the calligraphy and an invitation, a beautiful invitation when you get it. Because now everything is online.
And when you get a beautiful wedding invitation, it is stunning.
And what about big anniversary parties? Do you do that too?
The vendors at our show, of course, will help you with any celebration. Yeah. We really do push the weddings, but I think everybody should have a big anniversary party? Yes, they should.
We had one. And we had navy blue envelopes with white writing, and a lot of them didn't get delivered.
Ooh.
So you have to need the experts like you.
Laurette Veres is the owner and producer of the Bridal Extravaganza Show, happening this weekend at George R. Brown Convention Center. Okay, brides, you know where to go.
And grooms.
And grooms.
Laurette, and gay grooms.
Everybody.
Thanks for joining us. Coming up on Hello Houston, my conversation with pro cyclist Lawson Craddock ahead of the Tour de France. So avid cyclist, get ready for a great conversation. We'll be back. Stay with us right here for the second hour of Hello Houston.
Stay tuned. There's more Hello Houston on the way with Ernie Manous, Celeste Díaz Schurman, and Frank Billingsley. For the latest in local news, subscribe to the Hello Houston daily newsletter at HoustonPublicMedia.org. Hello Houston is a production of Houston Public Media. The opinions expressed by the guests of this program are solely their own and do not represent the views of management, staff, or underwriters of Houston Public Media. This is News 88.7.
We believe in your right to free information. Help protect trusted news that keeps us all informed by supporting Houston Public Media. Stand up for your right to information. Give today at houstonpublicmedia.org or call 888-909-0887.
We could see more rain this afternoon, 30% chance of showers and thunderstorms. This is your NPR station, KUHF, Houston. News 88.7, a service of the University of Houston. It's 12 o'clock.
Just ahead on this hour of Hello Houston, we continue diving into today's top stories, as well as talk with Jacques Bourgeois, current chair of Mayor Whitmire's LGBTQ Advisory Board. He'll tell us about this weekend's Pride events. I'm Frank Billingsley.
And I'm Celeste Díaz Schurman. We'll also hear another episode of my recurring feature, Cold Coffee, where I chat with former professional cyclist and current Houstonian Lawson Craddock ahead of the Tour de France.
Plus, we'll also share some events happening in Houston this weekend for our regular Friday feature, Last Minute Plans.
And we want to hear from you, so give us a call or send us a text at 713-440-8870. Or you can email us at talk@hellohouston.org. You can also watch us on our YouTube channel. Just go to hellohouston.org and click the big orange banner.
Hello Houston is made possible in part by founding sponsors John Bradshaw and Kathy Sanders, and by gifts from listeners like you.
Live from NPR News in Washington, I'm Louise Schiavone. The Supreme Court ruled today that lower courts had gone too far in efforts to block executive orders from President Trump, with federal agency bans related to birthright citizenship being a case in point. The 6-3 opinion gave the Trump administration more room to press its case on children born in the U.S. without at least one parent who's an American citizen or lawful permanent resident. President Trump today welcomed the decision.
Instead of merely ruling on the immediate cases before them, these judges have attempted to dictate the law for the entire nation. In practice, this meant that if any one of the nearly 700 federal judges disagreed with the policy of a duly elected president of the United States, he or she could block that policy from going into effect or at least delay it for many years.
The justices did not rule per se on the constitutional merits of birthright citizenship. The Supreme Court today upheld the part of the Affordable Care Act that made preventive care like cancer screenings free for patients. NPR's Selena Simmons-Duffin has details.
The U.S. Preventive Services Task Force is made up of volunteer experts. If they determine that a cancer screening or preventive medication is based on good evidence, the Affordable Care Act requires health insurers to cover it without any cost to patients. Braidwood Management, a company owned by Christian conservatives in Texas, challenged the constitutionality of the task force. It objected to covering HIV prevention medications, but the justices upheld the status quo in a 6-3 decision. The majority opinion, written by Justice Brett Kavanaugh, noted that the health secretary, currently Robert F. Kennedy Jr., has the power to review the recommendations. Selena Simmons-Duffin, NPR News, Washington.
2 weeks after they were killed in an apparent political assassination, State Representative Melissa Hortman and her husband Mark will lie in state in Minnesota. Minnesota Public Radio's Dana Ferguson reports.
State Representative Melissa Hortman and her husband Mark will lie in state Friday in the Capitol Rotunda, and members of the public can pay their respects. Hortman will be the first woman to lie in state there. Just 19 other state officials have been given the honor. The Hortman's golden retriever Gilbert, who was also killed in the attack, will be with them in the rotunda. Private funeral services for the Hortmans will be held tomorrow and video streamed for the public to watch. The alleged shooter who killed the Hortmans and injured another state lawmaker and his wife is in jail and faces murder charges. For NPR News, I'm Dana Ferguson in St. Paul.
The S&P 500 opened the day with a 0.5% increase, poised at this point in the day to stage a sharp turnaround from just 3 months ago when Trump tariff policies led shares lower. At this hour, the S&P up 39 points. This is NPR News in Washington.
Live from News 88.7 in Houston, I'm Gabrielle Dawkins. The city is launching another traffic crackdown. Mayor John Whitmire says this one will involve multiple agencies patrolling I-10 and Westheimer.
We're going to have a zero tolerance for road rage, speeding, and reckless driving. So let everyone know we want it to be proactive. Slow down because we're going to have multiple agencies enforcing traffic laws.
The traffic crackdown is the third one initiated by Whitmire. The previous two resulted in nearly 500 traffic citations. 2 Houston ISD parents are suing the district after teachers allegedly continue to use their child's preferred pronouns, despite requests from the parents not to do so. News 88.7's Kyle McClinigan says the parents argue it violates their constitutional rights.
The lawsuit claims that the district's alleged unwillingness to abide by their request violates their First Amendment right to freedom of religion and their parental rights under the 14th Amendment. However, Cameron Samuels, the co-founder of Students Engaged in Advancing Texas, says not affirming students' identities can leave lasting, harmful impacts.
And I understand where parents are coming from, but at the same time, this is fear that's based on ignorance.
While Houston ISD does not have any policy directly related to gender identity and pronouns, several Houston area school districts have passed controversial policies regulating the use of pronouns and requiring that parents be informed of their child's sexual orientation. Houston ISD declined to comment on the ongoing litigation. I'm Kyle McClinigan, News 88.7.
More Saharan dust is expected to hit Houston this weekend. This particulate matter from African deserts can be a danger to people with respiratory conditions. Dr. Pushan Johnny is an assistant professor at pulmonary with UT Health. Johnny says people with any breathing conditions should pay close attention to air quality if they're going to be outdoors and preferably stay indoors as much as possible. I'm Gabrielle Dawkins, News 88.7.
Support for NPR comes from NPR stations. Other contributors include Progressive. Progressive Commercial Auto Insurance protects the vehicles that work to keep small businesses moving forward, including protection while running errands and other tasks. At progressivecommercial.com.
From Houston Public Media and News 88.7, it's Hello Houston, an open forum on today's biggest stories affecting Houston and beyond. Call now, 713-440-8870, or let us know your thoughts on today's topics by emailing us at talk@hellohouston.org. And now here's your host for Hello Houston, Ernie Manous, Celeste Díaz Schurman, and Frank Billingsley.
We're back, our second hour on a Friday.
And boy, did we have a spirited first hour, and we've had a ton of comments. And
Yep.
But Frank and I still love each other.
We've talked
This
all
is a
about
great
diversity.
example.
We're going to continue to talk all about diversity.
Yes, because that's one thing our city does well.
Yes.
And inclusion.
And inclusion.
Yes,
and equality.
And equality. Yes, and respect for all.
Yeah.
But yes, welcome back to Hello Houston. It is Frank and
Celeste.
Ernie is out, and he will be out again next week on vacation. We miss you, Ernie. But
Hello,
you can,
Ernie.
Hi, Ernie. But you can join us on YouTube. You can watch us if you're listening in your car, you're heading to lunch. Enjoy lunch. Thanks for tuning in.
In our second half hour, we're going to have another great episode of Cold Coffee.
I'm excited, yes.
Yeah.
So the Tour de France is coming up in July 5th, and Houston has a great cycling community. And I don't mean riding to work. I mean like cyclist, real serious stuff. You know, a lot of people ride out in the Full Shore area. Katy has a big cycling community. And we have a former pro cyclist from Houston who's been in 10 Grand Tours.
Oh, wow.
Lawson Craddock, and I spoke with him yesterday because there's a lot of parallels to cycling, to being on a bike and then off a bike in your life.
Sweet.
So we'll hear about that.
All right, let's get going.
But yes, coming up this weekend, thousands of people are expected to gather in downtown Houston Saturday for an annual celebration of the city's LGBTQ plus community and its allies. Those who attend the Houston Pride Parade and Festival may notice a streamlined entertainment lineup along with fewer corporate logos on display.
And if you'd like to know more about Houston Pride, we're taking your calls and questions. 713-440-8870, because in studio right now is Jacques Bourgeois. And Jacques, I think you're in charge of all things gay, aren't you? You're in charge
just a little bit.
No, Jacques is in charge of Bunnies on the Bayou.
I am.
Oh, okay.
He's in charge of the Houston Pride Festival and Parade.
No.
I'm not quite in charge.
I am a former Grand Marshal for the Houston Pride Parade.
Gotcha. And then you're also on Mayor Whitmire's LGBTQ Advisory Board.
I am the chair of the LGBTQ
Okay, I want to start there. I want to start a little political before we get to the fun stuff.
Frank. Haven't you had enough of political?
Never.
My husband Kevin is on the same board.
He is.
Oh, okay.
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
And let's be honest. Not that the board doesn't have Mayor Whitmire's support, but it's had a bit of a challenge in the last year, really getting a lot going and getting a lot done.
Correct.
So what are the challenges that the advisory board to the mayor is facing right now?
A lot of the challenges that we run into are the fact that we haven't really had a lot of communication with the mayor on exactly what his administration wants to do. And it's very important for us because we are not a board and commission, we are an advisory board. So we're pretty much at the will of what the administration would like to do.
I hate to say that's intentional. Mayor Whitmire is an ally.
Yeah.
And he has said as much. He's also said, I have 150 advisory boards. I can't get to everybody right off the bat. So what can we do to get his ear on this?
Just having that open line of communication because, again, we have 150 advisory boards throughout the city, so it's kind of, we don't want you just to pay attention to us during Pride Month. We're, as Pride likes to say, 365. We're year-round. There's always issues with our community that we always need to address. And one of the things that we do well with the advisory board is trying to identify what pitfalls we have in our community, whether that be, disparity between LGBTQI veterans, whether it be between the fact that we actually have senior LGBTQI individuals now that actually need attention.
You mean 65 plus? What? Give me that 10% discount right now. Yeah, of course.
The AARP, add that to the LGBTQ.
Well, and there's still a lot of mental health with LGBTQI.
Yes.
Of course. So what are the biggest challenges you think are out there with the gay community right now?
I'm going to start with HIV awareness and the fact that access to that is being restricted, federally and even legislatively through our state. We're running into areas where we're running out of money or we no longer have access to those funding. So we're trying to figure out ways to be more strategic about getting the funding, making sure people still have access to HIV/AIDS care, and making sure, that stuff's not lost. All that progress isn't lost, so we can continue to move forward.
Yeah. Because a lot of people think that HIV's just been cured or
it's
AIDS
not.
has been cured, and it's
we're
far
close,
from it.
whereas it's not.
Well, and now the vaccine funding has been taken away.
Yeah.
They were very close to a vaccine, and that funding for that has been taken away.
Yeah.
But Jacques, I mentioned in the intro how this year at the Pride Parade we'll see less corporate sponsors. Can you talk to us about why that is and some of the loss of funding locally to our parade?
There have been a lot of funders who have just kind of with the tackle on DEI. If you go back a few months ago with our chamber, the LGBTQI chamber, we actually had an event that was scheduled for over here at the Federal Exchange
Federal
Building?
Reserve?
Federal Reserve. And we got booted out 2 days before and had to reschedule things because we weren't allowed in a federal building having that DEI stuff.
Being within that organization.
Correct.
That you
Correct.
all
and
are.
it's the Chamber of Commerce. It's bringing money to the city. We are.
Well, yeah. I know one. We're an LGBTQ owned gym, our gym, and we bring money in. We pay our taxes.
What gym you go to?
Well, Quality Life Fitness. Oh. That's the gym. I know you go. You look like you go to all the gyms in town. Tennis Express, that's a $30 million company. Yeah. There are a lot. The gay-owned companies in this town bring enormous amount of money into the city of Houston.
Yeah.
They should not be thrown out of the Federal Reserve because of new DEI measures by the Trump administration.
Correct. And that's exactly what it is. And that had a chain reaction effect with, normal funders, your Visas, your Diageos, for instance. They've been a big bunnies funder for a long time, and they pulled out because their initiative from top down just kind of says, pull out money. We can't be a part of that because they don't want the backlash.
Well, who's left? Let's give credit where credit's due. Absolute still a big sponsor?
I will go with Silver Eagle. That's my presenting sponsor with Bunnies on the Bayou. Hey.
What do you think the city of Houston does get right and Houstonians do get right in regards to supporting gay rights and making sure that people are feeling inclusive?
I will say this, and I've always said this about Houston. I've been in the community as a community leader for the past almost 2 decades. Oh my gosh, I'm old.
It's okay. You're not as old as Frank.
No, in gay years, I'm dead.
It's true. Hi, Daddy.
Granddaddy, more like it.
No, a lot of what we do get right is the fact that we are very cohesive. Houston has probably the most cohesive and well-connected LGBTQIA community as a whole. And even whenever it comes to the city, we are still fairly well-connected, but we can always do better. Mm-hmm. Houston is a microcosm of what the United States actually is. Yeah. We're all pulled together. We're a big blue spot for a reason. Mm-hmm. It's because it's kind of what America actually looks like. And we as a community, we're all meshed together. We have our little neighborhood. We like to think we're all spread out, but we're honestly not. We all have that common space that we're really good about.
What are you most excited about this weekend and Pride? Beyonce is going to be in town.
Beyonce, the Bridal Festival,
Extravaganza.
It's a trifecta of datum.
First of all, Beyonce, Miss Tina, if you're listening, I'm listening to your audiobook right now, Miss Tina.
I bet you they listen to Hello Houston.
You don't know. They're in town.
Absolutely.
They're real big on being local. I'm excited for Beyonce this weekend, for sure.
Yeah, but what are you excited about the parade? What can people expect? Where does it start? Where does it end?
So,
what kind of parties, events? Yeah.
I've always been a big proponent of the festival. Back when I ran Houston Gamers, we were big parts of the festival, just having that, being engaging with community that you don't always see every day. That's the best thing about Pride is everybody comes together. People you never would know, allies, the Liga Biga Tiga community. I like to shorten it. Just don't hurt me, y'all. Everybody just comes together and you get to have that whole community. Downside, it's hot, but it's Texas.
Yeah. And you guys don't wear much anyway.
Well,
I do.
During the Pride
That's another thing
parade.
about being 65. You wear a coat.
A captain.
Bring a fan, bring some sunscreen. No, but the most exciting part is being in the parade. This will be maybe my 5th or 6th or 10th, I don't know, time being in the parade along with my fellow grand marshals and such. So I'm really excited about that because the energy when you get out there, it's bar none. Yeah. It's wild.
It's as close to being Beyonce as you ever will.
Listen, I will never be Beyonce, but...
So when does, tell us about the festival beforehand. It's 11 to 6 down towards City Hall?
I believe the festival start is 11 to 6, and then the parade will start at 7:15 or so. That's a big misconception a lot of people have. Parade's in the evening. We try to make it as cool as possible.
When Kevin and I were honorary grand marshals after we got married in 2013 for the 2013 parade, and it was the only June day we've ever had that was 109 degrees. It was hot as bejesus. It was awful, but we got through it. So after that, we get through any kind of weather for the parade. It looks like it's going to be dry, warm, like in the 80s, and a little humid,
we
but
might
dry.
Get some overcast. I mean,
that would help.
You're the weatherman. You can do this.
I
can actually control the weather. I control the weather.
You're listening to Hello Houston, and we are talking with the current chair of Mayor Whitmire's LGBTQ Plus Advisory Board, Jacques. If you have any questions, give us a call, 713-440-8870.
So a lot of people may not realize that what World Pride was a couple of weekends ago.
In D.C.
We happened to be in Hawaii one October, and it was their Pride Day.
Yeah.
Pride was, and if you look it up, Pride occurs really
everywhere,
everywhere, but in different times.
Yeah.
And people have moved their Pride days to be more weather appropriate. But we have the reason. I think you probably know this, that June is considered Pride Month. It's because that's when Stonewall in 1969 occurred, and there was a raid in a bar in New York, and they fought back. They said, we're not going to be policed like this, where we have as much right to gather and be who we are as anyone else. And I mean, they all fought back. I mean, it became a bit of a protest, and that was the beginning, I guess, of saying we're here, we want to be seen, we want to be heard, and we're proud of who we are. Did I miss anything?
That's interesting that you use the word protest, Frank, because did Pride started as a protest?
Pride started as a protest. Correct. You're absolutely correct. And I'll also circle back with something else. You know, Houston's Pride Parade actually started originally like in July. Beginning of July is whenever we first started the Pride Parade, but it also moved back to also coincide with Stonewall as well.
Yeah, well, I know that and if you look back, the Dianas were celebrating Pride in the 50s, weren't they? I mean,
that is a 72, 75-year-old organization. They are actually the oldest LGBTQI organization in the world.
And they're right here. A lot of people don't know that. The Dianas are right here in Houston, and still a very active group.
Very active.
And a fun group,
and
too.
Great group, yeah.
We have EPA, which is Executive Professionals of Houston. We have LGBT Chamber of Commerce, as you mentioned. People think that it's all about a pride parade, but it's very much more than that as far as the gay community in Houston.
And I say this, running the biggest party organization, like people like to have that misconception of with Bunnies on the Bayou. Everybody's like, oh, that's a huge party. It's not we party with a purpose. You know, we raise a whole lot.
I like that. We party with a purpose.
Oh, wait, no, I go to that every time I can, and it's a fun time, but it does. I know you've give hundreds of thousands, if not
correct.
Of dollars, and you have like 10 organizations that get money.
We have 12 organizations.
12 organizations, and they how much money did you raise this year? It's always on Easter, by the way.
We haven't released that number yet, but we're probably about $150,000.
$150,000.
Yeah.
That's pretty nice.
It's lower than years past, going back to like your sponsorships, like coming in with lowering. The most that we've done is actually coming out of COVID. We did about $210,000, which is the most we've ever done in 1 year, which that all goes back to local community.
And people need to realize it is just a party with a DJ, and it's right there on the lawn by Wortham.
Park. Yeah.
You get the permits just like everybody else.
That's correct.
And throw a nice fundraiser.
That liquor is not free. That is an open bar tab that I pay at the end of the night, you guys.
Well, I buy a ticket to come. I don't get to go for free.
That's true.
I pay just like everybody else. So give me some good news about what's coming up in your world of Pride.
In my world of Pride, you know, aside from the event tomorrow, there's a lot that's actually happening. I believe there's a volleyball tournament happening. The gay volleyball. No, that was Easter weekend.
I know there's
outside.
gay dodgeball, gay volleyball, gay softball, gay kickball. There's gay everything.
Oh, you know, we actually have the World Series coming up for what is it? The Gay Softball League has the World Series here in Houston coming up in September.
Nice.
So we're actually hosting. That's Montrose Softball League.
Okay, people are going to the Pride Parade, get there at 7, and it lasts till about 10, and then everybody goes out to
Beyonce.
She might end up in a club or two. You never know.
No, she won't.
Jacques Bourgeois is current chair of Mayor Whitmire's LGBTQ Plus Advisory Board. Jacques, thanks for joining us today.
Hey, you're more than welcome.
And coming up on Hello Houston, we'll have another great episode of Cold Coffee as I sit down and talk with former pro cyclist, Lawson Craddock. This is News 88.7.
I'm Maria Hinojosa. Next time on Latino USA, women who wake up at 3 a.m. to make lonche for their husbands. Are they MAGA coded like the larger so-called trad wife movement? Latina trad wives, MAGA or not? That's next time on Latino USA.
You can hear it Sunday night at 7 o'clock.
Hey, it's Francis Lamb, host of The Splendid Table. This week it's a live event from the sunny climes of Tampa, Florida. From citrus to seafood, Spanish flavors, and Southern charm, we're learning about what makes the food of South Florida so unique. It's coming up on The Splendid Table.
Check out The Splendid Table. It's on Sunday at noon on News 88.7.
Houston Matters highlights the people, places, issues, and ideas that define Greater Houston, and we do it live on the air weekday mornings at 9 on News 88.7. But we know you're not always available then to listen, so subscribe to our podcast wherever you get yours, or find each day's program to stream online at your leisure at houstonpublicmedia.org. And reach out with questions or comments anytime. Email us at talk@houstonmatters.org.
Houston Public Media is licensed to the University of Houston System, governed by the UH Board of Regents. Information about open meetings, dates, times, and locations is online at uhsystem.edu. Support comes from Signify Business Cash by Wells Fargo. With this business credit card, cardholders can earn rewards on business purchases with no caps or categories to track. Learn more at wellsfargo.com/signify. Terms apply.
And now back to Hello Houston. To comment on any of today's topics, call or text 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. Now here's Celeste Díaz Schurman and Frank Billingsley.
The definition of elite is a select group that is superior in terms of abilities and qualities. And there are very few words that I think of that come after elite. One of those words is athlete. Then I take it up a notch when I think of an elite ability or quality. When you think of elite cycling, it feels like it's in its own category. In order to win, you have to be comfortable with discomfort, which applies to many areas of our lives. On this episode of Cold Coffee, I spoke with Lawson Craddock, former pro cyclist and Houstonian. Here's that conversation. Lawson Craddock is a former professional cyclist. He has raced 10 Grand Tours. He also happens to be from West Houston. Lawson retired in 2024 after a 14-year career as a pro cyclist. Lawson, thanks for joining me today on Cold Coffee.
Yeah, absolutely. Thanks for having me. So I'm stoked to be here back in Houston for once. And
yes. Yeah. And so full disclosure, as a journalist, I have to say I live in a house of avid cyclists. My husband grew up in Katy and his dad was a big cyclist. And so I kind of have an understanding of the Houston cycling community. But I think for those that might not know, I'm going to give a little bit of your information, a little bit of your resume. You raced in 3 Tour de France's, 2 Giro de Italias, and 5 Vuelta a España. As a young boy growing up in West Houston, did you ever imagine we would be sitting here talking about that type of race career?
Right. Well, I mean, yeah, any young boy, of course, that's what they dream of doing. And I'm lucky to be sitting here on the other side, with my health and being able to have lived that dream.
Yeah.
I'd be lying if I said I didn't think I would be sitting here doing it, because I always believed in myself, and every step of the journey I was very focused and dedicated and motivated, and driven to accomplish it. And yeah, it's pretty wild being on the other side now. To be honest, that's the part of the whole journey that was definitely the most scary.
Because when you say that you're on the other side, I mean, you retired in 2024. So what made you decide, okay, it's time?
Right. I mean, when I was 16, I started traveling to Europe. So I've pretty much at this point spent half my life traveling and being over in Europe and racing. And yeah, eventually it just kind of takes its toll. I'm very fortunate to the opportunities that I have and I have had, and being able to take advantage of them, but eventually it just it got a lot. I got married in 2016 to my best friend, and then I have 2 beautiful children at home. So my daughter is the older one, and she was turning 6 years old, and at that point we're gonna have to kind of decide: do we want to commit full time to Europe? Do we want to go back to Houston and for schooling? And the choice was pretty easy. We missed our families, the grandparents missed their kids. And so it was kind of, it was a very natural decision. Of course it was very different and challenging to make happen.
And well, what are you doing now here in Houston?
Right. So, my entire life, though, what I really wanted to do was join the family company. My dad, he started a roofing business, Craddock Roofing, back in 1984. And so I grew up always watching him climb up and down ladders. And, 4-year-old boy, all he wants to do is take a hammer and hit stuff. So that was always my goal and my dream. And cycling was just this really fortunate path that I was able to follow. But it was always my plan to come into the family business. So
well, now you're in the family business and you're not in that space of cycling. Do you ever miss the global life? Do you ever miss? I mean, we have the Tour de France coming up in July. How does that feel to now kind of be here?
Right, and yeah, it is very different. Watching these races, and I only stopped racing back in October. But I already feel like a massive disconnect from what I was able to do to, just a year ago to now. I watch these races and they're faster than ever. They're more exciting than ever. And I just think, how could I do that,
Right.
But it is fascinating. I still do love the sport. But it's just, life is so different these days. And I've enjoyed really being a spectator for the first time in my life.
So do you ever cycle now for fun?
I think I did my first bike ride about a couple weeks ago in the neighborhood with a couple other dads in the neighborhood.
Oh, that's funny. A group of good dads coming to cycle with a pro cyclist. How does that work out exactly?
Well, for one, it was a little bit too early in the morning. But it was a little sunrise ride, and then all I remember is I got off the bike and my body was sore and my hip flexor was so tight. I was just like, geez Louise, and that was only 1 hour on the bike as opposed to the 5 or 6 that I used to do. So
when you were training and you were in the midst of your peak conditioning, what does training as a pro cyclist look like?
Yeah, I mean, any pro cyclist will tell you, it's 5-6 hours a day on the bike. But what I learned throughout my entire career and as the years went on is the training was a lot of it was the mental aspect, forcing yourself to get in that mindset of, okay, I want to commit, I want to suffer, and I want to push myself to be the absolute best that I can be. So of course you have to ride, but you have to be committed and driven to actually do the work to be your best.
So you're talking about kind of exactly that mental aspect of it, and professional cyclists often tolerate significant discomfort as part of the sport. I mean, I'm going to even say it's a sport of suffering. You have to be very comfortable with discomfort. What lessons did cycling taught you that can translate to anyone's life?
Right, and I'd 100% agree with that. Cycling is definitely, all you do is hurt yourself, and whoever can hurt themselves the most typically is the one that wins. But it has taught me so much about myself, and the first and foremost thing is that, it all comes from within. You can always, try and look for ulterior motives and motivations, but at the end of the day, if you can't actually look yourself in the mirror and push yourself to the max and be comfortable with that, you're not going to make it very far. And that goes beyond cycling, and that's what I feel like I've been able to take into my life outside of the sport. You find that one thing and you latch onto it, and you figure out what pushes you, and you just get after it.
Can you tell us one of your races where you really were in a bad headspace, but you were able to kind of get out of that? And not 2018. We'll get to 2018. But I want to hear about some of your other major races that you really felt this is hard.
Right. And the first thing that comes to mind is this was a couple years ago. I was 2000 and towards the end of 2021. I was without a contract, and I had just been told by the team that I'd been on for the majority of my career that I wasn't going to be signed.
What team was that, Lawson?
It was called EF Pro Cycling, and just told one day before the World Championships was one of our biggest events. Hey, you're not going to be resigned next year. And at that point, it's at the end of the season. A lot of teams have filled up their spots, and I've still got to get on the bike and try and show up to one of the biggest races that I'll be doing all season. So I definitely remember some tough moments there, but you kind of find the glory in the suffering, and that's what I always relied on in the sport is the only constant that you always have is how hard you can push yourself. And
yeah. Now, something that I find so interesting about cycling and professional cycling is that even though it is you are on a bike by yourself, it still is a team sport. So explain that to some of our Hello Houston listeners that might not fully understand what the concept of pro cycling is and how you're talking about, you're on a team, but you're a cyclist. So people think, how does that work?
Mm-hmm.
Because there is a lot of strategy that goes into it.
There's very much so a lot of strategy, and we have the Tour de France coming up, and it's a great, watching the tours is a great way to learn about the sport because you have 3 weeks of racing, and it's the very pinnacle. Everyone's at their absolute best. But you have the tour, you'll have 22 teams, and each team will have 8 riders onto it. All those teams will have different goals, but at the end of the day, they'll find something that they want to succeed in to make them, make the race a success for them. And it takes all 8 guys to actually make that happen. There's so many sacrifices that each individual rider has to make for the success of the team. That was always kind of my job within the team is do the dirty work, and so that lets the leaders come in at the final moment and give them the best chance to win or have success.
So the thing is when somebody's watching like a Tour de France, they just see everybody hammering it, and it just looks like everybody's going really fast.
They are.
Elaborate. Yeah, well, they are going really fast. Elaborate on what you mean by you're doing the dirty work and letting somebody else go. Explain that to us.
Yeah, so the first thing that comes to mind is just the drafting process. You sit behind someone in the peloton on the bike, and you'll notice you're saving a lot of energy because they're blocking the wind for you. A lot of it's also positioning. You have 180 guys, 190 guys in the peloton on these tiny French roads. We all have earpieces, radios from connecting us to the cars behind us with the directors. And they're saying, hey, this is a very critical moment here. If we don't have our leader in the top 5, top 10 positions, the race is over. You got 180, 190 guys with the entire sport on the line of the tour. Being told that they're gonna fight to be there.
Yeah.
So it gets aggressive, and of course you need guys blocking the way, and you need guys that are able to position themselves in the peloton to be able to maneuver in the peloton during these tiny spaces amongst other riders going upwards of 40 miles an hour at the same time. So a lot of coordination, a lot of danger, and a lot of sacrifice,
and a lot of dynamics. How does cycling in a professional environment, when you're off the bike, what does that look like between cyclists?
Yeah, well, it's different, between cyclists, amongst the team than outside of the team.
Yeah, and you also have people from all over the world.
And that was one of the favorite parts about my career is I was pretty fortunate to be on teams with a lot of different nationalities. And the last couple of years of my career, I raced for an Australian team called Team Jaco Alula. And had the pleasure of, meeting a lot of Australians and people from other countries, and realizing there's different cultures out there. There's different people that, talk different, speak different languages. But they, over the years have become some of my closest friends. So when I look back on my career, it's the people that I miss definitely the most in that part of the lifestyle.
Yeah, and but you are in a great place when it comes to diversity.
Yeah, absolutely.
Houston has a strong road bike culture. Are you still involved? And I know in 2018, what I'm referring to is you raised money at the Tour de France after you crashed. How does it feel to be the only American cyclist to be awarded the Lanterne Rouge, which you can explain what the Lanterne Rouge is?
Yeah, the Lanterne Rouge in the Tour de France is it's a special prize for the last place rider. and the name comes from the last train car, on a big freight train or whatever. It has a red flag at on the back of it to signal that's the last guy. So that's how the name of the tour, the last place rider in the overall classification, got the name Lanterne Rouge.
So take us back to 2018. Here you are on the national stage. You're competing. I mean, you're basically living out any little boy who jumps on a bike and flies down their street. You're on this stage. You're here you are, Lawson, and you crash. And it's not just it's not just like a scrape on the knee. Talk to us about what happened in 2018. And then also for anybody listening, that perhaps feels like they're down and out.
Mm-hmm.
What advice would you give to them?
Yeah, so back to 2018, I was pretty fortunate to make the tour team that year. That was my big goal for the season. I wanted to be there at the start, and committed everything to it, and made the team. And halfway through the first stage, a water bottle was dropped in the middle of the road from a different rider, and I hit it full on. And you're on these tiny little tires, and careened off the side of the road, and I had a head-on collision with a spectator, unfortunately, and ended up kind of cut my eye open, and then fracturing my scapula. And my entire year was built up to that point, and then get off the ground onto the bike, and can't even hold onto the bike because my shoulder was in so much pain. And
what was going through your mind in that moment? Like, what are you, if you feel comfortable even going back to that moment?
Right, and not much. I mean, in that moment, I had one singular focus, and I was like, just finish, just get to the line, and then reassess from there. And I wasn't really thinking about that. I was thinking about everything that I'd sacrificed to even get there. And that helped push me all the way to the finish, and it got done. And they have a mobile x-ray site and a little ER station right there at the finish line. So they stitched up my eye, and then got the x-ray, and then, realized it was a fracture. But team doctor, who I trust, wholeheartedly, Kevin Sprouse, he kind of said, hey, look, this is doable. The fracture right there on the spine of the scapula, it doesn't restrict movement all that much. It'll be painful, but it is an option to continue. And I latched onto that. I had this small glimmer of hope that everything that I'd done in the previous year to lead up to that moment wasn't just for nothing. So I was able to, I just latched onto that, and then needed some more motivation. So I put someone out on Twitter just saying, hey, I'm going to keep going as long as I can. For every stage I finish, I'm going to donate $100 to the Alkek Velodrome. Wow. And it kind of exploded from there, and was able to make it all the way to Paris. It was very painful. I'd never do it again. But yeah, it taught a lot about myself and about the people that I surround myself to.
And so what advice would you give to somebody who feels like they've crashed?
Right. I mean, we all have setbacks. And when I started the tour that year, I had my idea of what would make that race successful. And that went down the drain, halfway through the first stage. But by no means was that race a failure. My goals changed, my plans changed, and it's one of the the greatest moments of my career was getting to that finish line, even though I was dead last place by by a mile, but at least. But yeah, it just taught me, be flexible, be able to change and adapt to the certain situation, because no matter how bad you may think it's in the moment, you can still salvage it.
Mm-hmm. Now, you talked about the Alkek Velodrome. Mm-hmm. Are you doing anything with that? Where are we in Houston when it comes to cycling, and what does that community look like now? Mm-hmm. Are you seeing other supporters of road cycling in the area? I
think so. I've always thought Houston has one of the greatest families of cycling in at least Texas and probably, the whole United States. We have such a diverse culture, and cycling is such a universal language that we have. Mm-hmm. So that's been very special, but definitely the Alkek Velodrome, I hold it near and dear to my heart. I grew up just 5 minutes away from it, and I grew up racing out there ever since I was about 10 years old. So I do have a youth cycling league. We call it the Lawson Craddock Youth Cycling League, and we have great coaches out there, and we hold camps to teach kids how to ride on the velodrome out there. We hold one in the spring, and then some all throughout the summer. So we just finished up our last one yesterday, actually. So I was out there and talking to the kids and seeing the passion that they have just being on a bike. It's such a great venue because, parents could, be there. They can watch their kids ride around. It's enclosed. There's no traffic. But it is so special, and it's one of some of my finest memories come from a bike or coming from the Alkek Velodrome as a kid. So, So Lawson, I can't have you here and not ask. Throughout cycling history, there has been a
backdrop of doping allegations and questions about performance and the performance-enhancing drugs. You talked about Texas. We think of a major name, pro cycling, Lance Armstrong. Do you think the sport and the regulatory bodies have really gotten a handle on that? Where do you see cycling and doping and the stigma around it?
Yeah, so it's definitely, cycling has this rough history, and we're not the only sport to have that. Cycling just seems like it has a most high-profile fall from grace from the Lance days. You know, have this cancer survivors come in, done this unimaginable thing, inspirational figure, and turns out it was aided by doping. For me, I feel very lucky that I was able to come in after that. Because it was so high profile, everyone in the sport took it so seriously to clean it up. And I was able to come into the sport that I truly believed and still believe is clean. You're always going to have guys trying to cheat the system. That's never going to change. But the sport as a whole, I truly and wholly believe it is clean. And we're the only sport, Olympic sport or any sport, professional sport that pays for their own doping agency. So it is pretty special to be a part of that. I hope cycling, I think it does a good job of setting the example going forward, and I hope other sports recognize that.
So we've touched on it a little bit, but the 2025 edition of the Tour de France starts next weekend. Will you be watching it? And are you going to have FOMO? What is that going to feel like watching it? And I want to know all the things that Lawson Craddock thinks about Tour de France. Who do you pick to win? Are there any Americans that you're rooting for? But yeah, talk to me about this year's Tour de France.
Right, and no, absolutely. I'm very excited to watch the tour. I think I'll have FOMO until probably about towards the end of the first stage when I see how hectic and crazy these guys are. But it is a very exciting time in the sport. We have one rider who's just seems more dominant than anyone else, and that's Tadej Pogačar. But this year, all the main competitors seem to have all had a good, healthy run into the tour, so they should be hitting it at their absolute best, which is very exciting. So I am very excited to watch it. Also, we do have another transplant, a California transplant living here in Houston. His name's Nielsen Palace, but he's racing the tour this year as well.
Fabulous. So people need to watch out for a Houston Houstonian out there. I mean, kind of, but that's
absolutely.
exciting.
And Nielsen, I'm very excited to watch him. As far as Americans go, we do have a lot of talent racing at the top level of the sport. So any of these guys, I'll just be there as a fan, watching and rooting them on.
I love that. Okay, so do you ever see yourself getting back into cycling again at a professional level? So a lot of ex-pros join teams as coaches and directors. Does that interest you at all?
No. I feel very comfortable with where I am in my life, and my wife and my family have sacrificed so much to get me there, and I'm glad to have done it, and I've left the sport with my health. I'll always be a supporter. I'll always watch it. I might maybe talk about it someday. But in terms of being part of the scene, I think I'm happy with what I'm done, and I'm committed to focusing on roofing now.
Yeah. What advice would you give to a young cyclist that is listening to this and says, or a parent even, of a child that loves cycling?
Right. So, I mean, this answer, I've been asked this question almost every step of my career, and the answer is kind of always changed. What I would say now is, don't focus on others. We get lost with, just trying to look at the number next to us on a result sheet. Say, it's second, fourth, first, or whatever. This guy was here, this guy was there. Focus on yourself. Make sure that when you get on that bike or pick up a baseball bat or basketball, just get the most out of yourself, because it doesn't really matter what anyone else is doing or how they're, what their performance is. What matters is what you're doing and how comfortable you feel with that.
Lawson Craddock is a former professional cyclist. Lawson, thanks for joining me today on Cold Coffee.
Absolutely. Thank you.
Coming up, we'll share some events happening in Houston, and there are a lot of events happening this weekend for our regular Friday feature last-minute plans, and we have a friend popping in that's going to be heading to see Beyonce. Stay with us.
What you hear on this station, every report, every interview, every update, is only here because someone like you gave.
80% of Houston Public Media's funding comes from Houstonians like you. Our newsroom runs on support from you, our community.
You have the right to know what's going on, and you have the power to make sure others do too.
Join the community right now at houstonpublicmedia.org/donate or call 888-909-0887.
This week on The Sam Sanders Show, Allison Williams. She's best known for starring in the hit HBO series Girls. But when it comes to the big screen, Allison is a very proud scream queen.
It's the irony, though, that gets me because I can only watch horror movies on planes.
Allison Williams on Girls and her new horror comedy, Megan 2.0.
You can hear it Sunday night at 6 p.m.
Next time on Climate One, the Biden administration set ambitious goals to electrify the U.S. car market, but demand hasn't met expectations.
Automakers expected to sell a lot more electric vehicles over the past 2 years than they really did. EV sales did go up, but it was not what they had hoped for.
Is the EV transition stuck in neutral? On the next Climate One.
Listen to it Sunday morning at 6.
Find out why President Trump's rhetoric has Canadians boycotting travel to the U.S. this year.
Then you have the nonsense of Canada's the 51st state, which is an insult to Canada.
Only a bully would see civility, humility, kindness, generosity as weak traits of character.
Hear how it sounds from the other side of the border on the next Travel with Rick Steves.
You can hear that tomorrow morning at 6 a.m. on News 88.7.
And now back to Hello Houston. To get your comment in on any of today's topics, call or text 713-440-8870 or email us at talk@hellohouston.org. And now here's Celeste Díaz Schurman and Frank Billingsley.
We're back.
It's officially the end of the week.
It is the end of the week. Anything going?
Yeah, we have a friend's 40th surprise birthday party, so we'll head to that.
Did you just ruin the surprise?
No, I don't know. I don't know. You don't know who it is. I have a lot of friends. Oh my gosh, did I just? No, I didn't. And then I'm going to actually hang out with my cousins this weekend as well. So I'm very excited.
Where are you going to hang out?
We're going to go to dinner. We're going to go to the Almafi.
Where?
Almafi? I think that's what it's called.
That sounds good. It sounds Italian.
It is delicious. It's one of my faves. It's a cool little neighborhood joint. What about you guys? What are y'all up to?
We have in-laws coming.
Okay.
My sister-in-law and her husband and their son. I always tell young people getting into weather, here's what people want to know about severe weather. When's it going to get here? How long is it going to last? And how bad is it going to be?
Same thing with your in-laws. I like that, Frank. I like it.
And then we may slip away for something. There's a little party tonight we were just invited to, so we may slip away for that. And then Saturday is the Pride Festival, and there's also a big art show at Art of the World Gallery on Alabama, which I like, or Westheimer rather. And then on Sunday, Eloise Nichols is closing.
Your favorite restaurant. I said that when I saw it in the newspaper. I literally told Dan, I said, that is Frank's, one of his spots.
Well, we can walk there. Yeah. It's an Adair restaurant. Los Tios.
Yeah, Los Tios and Adair.
And across the parking lot, Boss Cat also, I hear, is closing the end of August. But Sunday, we have reservations for brunch for Kevin and myself, and
as like a goodbye brunch.
It is because they're doing an employee party that night. Mm-hmm. So their last meal that they're serving to the public is brunch. So we're going to go to that on Sunday. But I love the staff. I love Erica, the manager there, and Andy, our waiter.
I have heard so many times. So number one, being in the restaurant industry is tough in general, but I've heard so many times here in Houston, it's competitive, but it's also a hard market within the real estate.
I hear the leases are getting out of control.
Leases are extremely out of control.
I wonder if people are trying to make up for COVID.
Oh, absolutely. I think it is. And I think also more high rises are going in, more higher end things are coming up, and it's pushing prices up. But that's a whole other conversation, Frank. You know what's happening?
It is. But anyway, we're going to do dinners and brunches and lunches and bars.
The best.
That is our weekend. And Pride will be fun, too.
That sounds fabulous. But you know what else is going on this weekend?
No, nothing. That's it.
I don't know if you've heard of her, but Beyonce is returning home. She's coming all weekend long. Beyonce returns to her hometown for 2 shows on June 28th and 29th at the NRG Stadium in support of her Grammy Award-winning 2024 album, Cowboy Carter. Both shows begin at 7 p.m. And, you know, that's exciting. We have a friend. Well, I was walking in this morning. Okay, so I'm going to story time. I was walking in this morning and one of our coworkers, Cece. Come on in,
she's
Cece.
my coworker, too.
Yes, our
We talk
coworker.
every day.
We talk every day, right here. I was like, oh, Cece, what are you doing this weekend? And she just like nonchalantly goes,
I was personally invited by Beyonce to come to the concert tomorrow.
By Beyonce?
Right,
in
right.
my mind.
In your mind?
Yes, absolutely.
Okay,
So
Cece, you got to tell us. I mean, going to a concert nowadays is a full thing. Do you have the outfit? You got to have the outfit, the pre-party, the post-party, the what?
Mhm.
Tell us what's going on. What are
So
you guys
that's
up to?
the problem, guys. I don't know what to wear.
And yeah, let me tell you, I've been to a Beyonce concert, and you better get it going, girl.
It's very
You
serious.
better get it together.
It's very
fast.
serious. And my friends don't play. So I got to, tonight, as soon as I get off, I am going to go find some, Corey referred me to some places.
Okay.
But I got the theme down.
What's the
So
theme?
either
Country, right?
country,
But style and country.
stylish. I'm either going to wear all white, all black, or blue jean.
Ooh, denim. We're going with denim. I
Denim.
kind of like a good, what is it? I like a Texas tuxedo.
Oh.
A Texas tuxedo.
I can do a Texas
like
So
it.
where are your seats?
I'm on the floor.
Well, you know
Cece.
what?
Okay, were they really?
Ain't no hold.
I love it. Cece, were they really $8,000?
I do not know how much they cost.
Okay, got it.
You know,
You don't have to disclose that information. But
you could do a lot for people with $8,000.
I know, but it's going to a worthy cause.
Well, you know, the Bay Good.
It's going
Bay
to Queen.
Good is Beyonce's charity, Bay Good.
Yes.
And she gives a lot of money. She gives a lot of money to Houston.
Yes,
Yeah,
she
She
does.
does. She gives
Yes,
millions
And
away
her mom,
every
Tina,
year.
is still really involved. Tina
Yes.
Knowles is very
I saw
involved
her.
in Houston.
I saw her dad the other day in a furniture store, like
Did
2
you-
weeks ago.
Did you say hello?
Yeah, and I introduced myself. I mean, he doesn't really know me, but he used to be at Channel 2 every now and then.
Oh, yeah.
And
I bet.
he's
He's very well known
So,
in the community.
what are you most excited about this weekend?
You know what? I'm hearing different stories about how she went back and she's doing other, records and songs. So I'm looking forward to hearing some old Beyonce, some Crazy in Love, some,
Yes.
Yeah.
I mean, it's not
Put a ring on it.
Oh, yeah, single lady.
It's
Single
not,
lady here.
it's not really on brand anymore. I mean, she really, something that Beyonce does so well that I think that truly has paved the way for a lot of artists is she embodies 100% her album.
Yes.
So right now it is Cowboy Carter and she is Cowboy Carter.
Yeah.
I mean, it is,
It'll
she
be a
lives
show.
it out.
A
It'll
show
be a
I'm
show.
hoping to see Rumi, though. That's going to be the highlight. Her daughter is
Romy,
supposed
her
to be
daughter.
there.
And Blue Ivy
Yes,
also
Blue is going to
performs
be
in it.
dancing, but she's been bringing
She
Rumi on
was in
stage,
the-
so I'm hoping she does it here.
You know, the Christmas Day football game, halftime?
Yes.
I was at that, and I'm pretty sure Blue Ivy was there.
Really?
Yeah.
Yeah. She's so tall.
It
You
was,
know, I
well, I
gotta
was
say,
way up there, but
I really respect that. I love that Beyonce isn't, her daughters she is incorporating her family in her life. And so many times you see artists, especially women, especially mothers, that are whatever career. I mean, she's obviously touring and that's a grind.
Yeah.
But she's bringing her girls in. And what an example to be like, okay,
Yeah.
you want to be a performer? You're going to perform next to me.
yeah, Pink does the same thing.
Yes.
Her
Really?
daughter, yeah.
Wow,
Pink's
I had
daughter
no
performs
idea.
that.
Yeah, but I feel like she is setting an extraordinary example for her
Well,
daughters.
take this
so.
for what it's worth. When I saw the Beyonce concert years ago, I was on the floor.
Renaissance.
Yes, and people were not only standing on the floor, they were standing in their seats. Standing in their seats on the floor, which means if you wanted to see the show, you were going to stand in your seat too.
Oh, boy.
So I would wear
prepared.
I would wear sparkly tennis shoes.
Listen, let me tell you,
You might be right.
I went to the Wiggles, and it was the same
Oh,
situation.
yeah. But people have respect for Beyonce. They don't sing all her songs. You know?
Listen, people have respect for the Wiggles too, okay? But Cece, that's
wow.
really exciting. So how far in
Yes.
advance did you have to get your tickets?
I just received. I was gifted a ticket.
Okay, you were gifted. You were gifted a ticket to friends
2 days ago.
Nice.
So
what's up with my friends? Why am I not being gifted Beyonce tickets?
Oh,
yeah.
We'll take you next time.
Next time. Next time. Well, Cece, you have the best time.
I will.
With the queen bee
I'll have
herself.
Pictures. I'll let you guys know what outfit I chose.
I can't wait
That's
to see.
right. Hello, Houston. You guys be safe. That brings us to the end of the week for Hello, Houston.
Oh, it's goodbye, Houston.
Bye, Houston.
We want to thank you for listening, chatting, chiming in, and most importantly, having respectful conversations right here. We will be back on Monday with more conversations. This is News 88.7. You guys have a great and safe weekend.
Happy Gay Pride.
Thanks for listening to Hello Houston. Join us every Monday through Friday from 11 a.m. to 1 p.m. to talk all things Houston. The Hello Houston production team includes Garrett Bowman, William Menjivar, Jen Altai, Todd Holslander, and Jim Kovacic. For the latest in local news, subscribe to the Hello Houston daily newsletter at houstonpublicmedia.org. Hello Houston is a production of Houston Public Media. The opinions expressed by the guests of this program are solely their own and do not represent the views of management, staff, or underwriters of Houston Public Media. This is News 88.7.
Support for Houston Public Media comes from listeners like you and from Emporium Presents, bringing folk duo Gillian Welsh and David Rawlings to Cullen Performance Hall on August 15th. Tickets now available at Ticketmaster.com.
About a 30% chance